Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining and listening into this podcast. We're going to be looking at what's going on in social care over the next couple of sessions. So my name's Pete. I am Head of Partnerships for Flourish. I've been with Flourish for 11 years now. I was formerly part of Grey Matter Learning, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by Karolina today from the Care Workers charity. Karolina, feel free to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Pete. I'm Karolina, CEO at the Care Workers charity, a former care worker. On the 23rd of March, which while we're recording was yesterday, I've just been at the charity for the last 6 years. So that was a big anniversary. Can't believe it's gone so fast.
Amazing. That's amazing news. Huge milestone for the charity, and great to see you do such amazing work for the sector. And we're really excited to be partnered with you. I think today let's kick off and look at let's jump straight in. What's wrong with care, but also why, despite everything we've learned, everything we went through as a sector, especially during COVID. Am I right in saying it feels like so much feels unchanged? Do you think, Karolina?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's quite painful to think that 6 years ago when I started, as we went into a first lockdown, the first few months, well, all of COVID was very hard, but the first few months were hard. But it seemed like people started to understand the contribution of social care. And they were clapping for the NHS, but then they also started clapping for care workers. It's like, wow, finally, we've got a breakthrough with the society at large. And then it all just collapsed in on itself. It didn't help that Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, was talking about how care homes are killing people and framing it only as it social care was at fault rather than government policy. And it all very quickly went away and back to, care work is unimportant. It's a last resort career for anybody. People are treated really badly in social care, which is quite opposite to what actually happens. When you ask why, I think social care sits at the intersection of different issues. Social care is a feminist issue. Majority of the workforce are women. Social care is an issue around race because a lot of care workers are migrant workers. So it's a matter of citizenship, a matter of a visa. And recent changes to the immigration policy are doing very little, quite the opposite of reassuring care workers that they are wanted here and they're doing important work. Saying that only care workers will have to work 15 years to apply for a visa, it's quite outrageous, I think. And then you have the ageist issue, because majority of the workforce are middle-aged or older. Young people don't see it as an attractive place to come and work in. And it's also an ableist issue, because people who draw on social care have disabilities, have different health issues. And as a society, we don't necessarily look favorably upon people who need care. So I think that is the why. There are a lot of issues to do with the workforce or with people who receive care that people A, don't want to talk about, B, misunderstand, and C, are actually rather weirdly against, like, for example, migrant workers. So yeah, I think that's where a lot of it is coming from.
I think you're right. There is a lot wrong with the sector, and we could sit and talk about the country as a whole and spend the next week talking about what's wrong. Share a recent memory with me of something that really sums up the state of care for you now.
It is the immigration policy. I think that exclusion of the social care workforce, saying that you have to show contribution to be applied for a citizenship, and that care workers somehow won't meet that contribution requirement within 10 years, and they have to do additional 5 years above any other profession, just shows the vast disrespect, misunderstanding, just complete lack of an idea of what social care is and what care workers do, how important it is. It just blew my mind.
Do you think the government actually understands social care and what we do?
I think the government only understands social care through the prism of the NHS, of how it can take away work from the NHS, how it can support the NHS. I think in their head somehow social care creates an issue for the NHS because they see, I think, discharges or issues with discharges as a social care problem rather than the NHS problem, or not the funding problem that it really is. I think there are very few politicians out there that truly understand social care. And I think it's a matter of privilege for some, where people have haven't necessarily had to use state-funded social care for the family members. Maybe they've gone private, which is quite a different experience as well. And I think it's also a fact that people don't want to think about it or talk about it because it's the kind of thing that people are scared of.
Do you think that was different kind of 3 to 5 years ago? Do you think that's improved? It's got worse?
No, I don't think the understanding was necessarily any better at any point in terms of the government and the society. And that I see two main reasons for it. Okay, three, including the intersection of different issues. But one of them is people don't vote on social care. If people don't vote on it, politicians won't see it as a priority. And ONS figures show quite clearly that that's not really what people care about that much. And then I would say the other thing is, just let me phrase this carefully. It's something that people don't want to think about. It's the kind of behind closed doors, a family member or somebody I know needs care. It's not something that people plan for. I think culture in the UK is that of fear of death and denial that everybody dies, rather than accepting it as part of life and planning for it very well. For example, like you have in America, power of attorney, wishes. If I get in a hospital, I only want to be on a vent for 30 days. We don't really do that here. It's very different planning for emergency or later life here. And I think that really gets in the way with social care because people just don't want to think about it. Out of sight, out of mind. Let's pretend it doesn't happen. Let's pretend it's never going to affect me. So let's not vote on it. And then if people don't vote on it, politicians don't act on it. And that's it.
Do you think some of that should be made mandatory at some power of attorney, or do you think it just needs to be discussed more, conversations about it?
I don't think you could really mandate for it because everybody's family situation is rather different. I think there is definitely a point of educating the society that it is important. There are free wills months, but it always feels like it's still quite late. For me, it's one of those things that should be really discussed in secondary school. When you grow up, you put life insurance in place, you put your ISA in place, you put your wishes for whatever, because you never know what happens and your family should know what your wishes are or start thinking about it. So you work out what they possibly could be. When I was a care worker, I found it rather horrifying that a crisis would hit a family. And I mainly worked with self-funders. So there are people lucky enough that were able to pay for care that they wanted, and quite a lot of care of that as well. But even in those families, that those people were avoiding the conversations and they didn't have things in place and the wills weren't in place. And it seemed like such a troublesome and such a difficult conversation to have, rather than a given that we just do it. And it causes a lot because when you're already at the point of distress, when somebody needs to access care at the point of crisis, to add to it further distress around estate planning or just thinking simply about some simple wishes, what treatments do I want to receive in a hospital or not, for example, what kind of care I want, whether it's at home, whether it's in a care home, or when people don't have capacity anymore to make those decisions. And that's when decisions are being made. It's too late. And it's unnecessary additional stress, I think. It does need to be planned sooner.
It does. And actually, you talking just brought back memories of a conversation with my wife about, if the worst was to happen, what would we both want? And it's not an easy conversation to have, but I think it's needed. I think you have to have that conversation. You have to sometimes bite the bullet and say, actually, no, I need to have this conversation. I need to share with you exactly what my wishes are and why. COVID hugely impacted the sector. And we had, if you think about all the people that went into kind of homes and sadly didn't come out and went into hospital and didn't come out, I think how many of those people didn't have that conversation with their partners, with their families, with their loved ones. And that hugely makes you think.
And I think even if you don't have things in writing, just having a conversation is important because people assume that if they're in a relationship, for example, the other person will have exactly the same opinions and views. And a conversation happens like, oh, okay, I did not expect that. So just having a conversation so you can respect the wishes of the other person. And I do think that putting it on paper is also very, very important. It just, like I say, it removes the stress. And care workers have to play advocates for people they support all the time. That is part of the nature of the job, really. I don't think is often recognized. But I'm quite sure in saying that I doubt any care worker wants to be involved in the family arguments about estate arrangements or funeral arrangements or anything else, because shouldn't have to be something they do. They should be there to support, but not to mediate decision making.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I really do. I think it's something we need to make more people of. During COVID, you mentioned it, the thing for the NHS clapping for carers. We heard a lot about care workers being heroes, and I've got memories of my wife being, as she was a carer at the time, and the things that she was doing. What, if anything, changed after that? You know, do you think lockdowns stopped? Everybody's going back to normal. What changed? What didn't change?
First of all, I find the hero trope very unhelpful, because calling somebody a hero assumes that they have superpowers, that they are different than a regular human. And co-workers don't. They still need to eat. They still need to pay their bills. They still need a place to live. And none of that is given to them because they're a hero. And that also means that whatever they do, they can just do. They have this super extra power energy. And it isn't that is also limited. So I found that whole idea rather unhelpful in reference to care workers. What changed? I think what changed was a number of people that were aware of social care workers, that it exists, if they haven't come across it in their life before. What hasn't changed is the general attitude toward what care work is, whether it's skilled or not, whether it's important or not, or whether it should be paid more or not, because we haven't really seen a change from that. I remember there was time in 2020 where I hoped naively and wished that the outcome of that would be, for example, registration of care workers, because care workers not having IDs was a big issue during COVID. So creating that professional body with a register for care workers and establishing better rates of pay, particularly around sick pay. Because we had care workers, we paid out millions during the first 2 years of COVID in terms of income support to care workers who had to isolate or shield because of COVID, particularly in 2020 before we had testing, but also after testing came into play. Because when you're on low income, losing a week or two of your pay is catastrophic consequences. But again, 6 years later, since we started, when we went into the first lockdown, care workers' sick pay is not really common. Very few providers do full sick pay rather than statutory sick pay. And many care workers feel they have to go to work when they're not well, or they're made to go to work because they told nobody can cover your shift and you have to carry on. And so disappointingly, I think very little that is significant and would impact the whole workforce has changed.
How does that for you impact on the people that are receiving that frontline care?
That's a very good question. I think people don't talk enough about the correlation between well-being of the workforce and the quality of care that they can deliver. And that's something I've always been interested in. And I think asking a care worker who is hungry to go to work and deliver outstanding care, it's just not right. So I think there's definitely an impact. We are already short-staffed as a sector, which means that care workers that are doing more hours than they should be doing, which means they're probably most likely overtired. We're in a cost of living crisis, and care workers are applying to us and they're reporting they can't pay for basics, bills, food, go on credit cards, and the debt is mounting. And then what do? Things aren't suddenly going to the cheaper. If anything, it seems they're going to get far more expensive again, and petrol is getting more expensive in the last few weeks, etc. And then in terms of the impact on people who draw on care, I think they're getting more tired, more stressed. Care workers, they're still trying to do their best, but there's only so much you can ask of from an individual to give when they feel on edge about their bills, about being able to provide for the children, about being able to have secure housing in place.
And you've mentioned obviously the Care Workers Charity gave out millions. Tell me a little bit about the kind of support that Care Workers Charity offer to the care sector.
Yeah, so we support care workers in three main ways. First of all, there's a benevolent fund. We support hardship grants to care workers. They can apply to us. Grants open once a month. People can apply to us for financial support. That could be money towards an MOT because they need a car to work in the community, to pay for petrol. That could be money to support them financially because they've been off sick for 3 weeks and they've only received SSP. There could be around sickness and injury in different ways as well. They may need some equipment around that, for example, or somebody's washing machine has broken and they can't wash the work uniform and they can't go to work. Secondly, we have our mental health support, and that's in two ways. First of all, care workers can self-refer to therapy, online therapy, and then they receive support from a registered professional, from a therapist. But also we pay money towards training mental health first aiders, the kind of peer support later on for care workers to signpost and to support their colleagues. And lastly, but in a way most importantly, it's our advocacy and campaigning work. So we hold a grant with the RAIN Foundation, where they've given us some money to pay care workers for the time to participate in conference speaking, in engagements with stakeholders such as CQC, DH, Skills for Care, to participate in research, academic research as well. And we have 40 care workers on our advisory board and care worker champions group that we meet with regularly, that we speak to, that we run some ideas past, that we talk to them about what's the most important thing. It's quite a representative and diverse group from different geographical locations, different settings, different demographic backgrounds, etc. Well, we campaign for care workers to be recognized as skilled workforce, for registration of care workers for a professional body, and for vastly increased funding to the sector, because we recognize that it is the local authorities that really commission most of social care. They set the rates, which are terrifyingly low. Some places it's illegal what people are offering, not being paid. Because of that, some care workers are not being paid for training time, they're not being paid for travel time. So, basic things aren't being covered, let alone paying extra. And we have a workforce that sits just above minimum wage. So yeah, there are quite a lot of different bits of work that we do. And we try to support people, not just through benevolent fund, but trying to drive the change as well.
Amazing. So obviously you've touched on quite a few different things that you impact on. What do you think a meaningful change and structural change actually looks like that would reduce some of the not the need for the care workers charity, but, mean that not so many people need to seek out your help and get grants for things because we're being paid an affordable living wage?
Oh, I'd absolutely be the happiest if we could close the charity down. So your question, what would reduce the need for the charity, is absolutely fair, because that is the end goal, to get the workforce to the state where people don't need to apply for emergency funding, because they shouldn't have to. We're talking about people that are supporting lives of other people. If anybody should be paid well and not have to worry about putting food on the table, it should be people that support lives of other people. So in terms of meaningful change, and I know I've said it probably 100 times already in this conversation, but it is the funding. Different bits of research and report may say, care workers don't care about pay. Rubbish. Care workers care about pay. Everybody cares about pay, because in this day and age, without pay, you can do very little unless you have a trust fund. And I don't believe many care workers sit on one. So the pay is a very important thing, and it needs to be improved, because when you're giving people a choice to go and work in your local Aldi and then be a care worker, when in a local Aldi you have your guaranteed hours, quite good career progression, better paid than what we can offer, and far less responsibility for another human's life, we can't blame people that they would choose to work in Aldi. And that is absolutely fair. So we need to make it more attractive. We need to recognize what the job actually is, which is supporting life and well-being of another person. And it's huge responsibility that goes with it. So for me, it is the recognition of care workers as skilled workers for a professional body, through a register that enables them to show who they are, to be respected for it, to get discounts in shops, because Blue Light Card may say, we accept care workers, but then you go to most of their partners and say, only accepted with an NHS ID. So it's things like that. They make a difference. And for the public to finally understand, not anybody can be a care worker, because they shouldn't. There are a lot of people that should never go near care. And there is a barrier to access. Because if there is no barrier to access, it seems like unskilled work, and it seems like meaningless work, or something that just anybody can do. And I think we're just getting in our own way by saying, anybody can be a care worker. No, people with the right values, no matter their previous work experience, could absolutely try to be a care worker. But can we please stop saying anybody can be a care worker?
I heartily agree with that. I think that you said heroes is the wrong word for care workers. My wife is my hero to me. My wife was a care worker. She and we've touched upon this before, and she was in care for 17 years, and she is a very unique person. Her behaviors, she is such a caring person, and I think that is the thing, that I couldn't do what she does. She is completely wired differently to me. I enjoy what I do. I do what I do, but being able to do that, I couldn't do that. And for her to do that, she is a hero to me for doing that. And thinking back to COVID, and she would get in the house and she'd be like, "Don't come near me." She would be straight in the shower, showered down, clothes in the washing machine, and then she would come and say hello to me. And she might have just done a 12, 13-hour shift. And the first thing she wants to do is come back and just give me a hug and just say, "I've had a hell of a day." Or for me to just say, "Well done, you're back. You can relax. You haven't got to worry about anything." But she was like, "I can't stop until I know I'm safe and everybody's safe." So in that respect, she is a hero to me. And I think there's a lot of carers out there that family and friends would probably say the same. But again, I completely agree. I think there is real shift change needed into social care and people supporting social care and wanting to become part of social care, and social care to be talked about in schools. Like you said, let's talk about wills, let's talk about life skills in schools. Let's give people real world experience that says, actually, let's make the ability for children to go into care homes and see more about what care is and have those conversations and learn from the generations and all the different types of people that we have in care, and to see all the great stuff that happens. I think that for me, I get what you're saying with structural change. I think there needs to be some huge shift towards social care.
I think weirdly, yeah, so it was a horrific time, but I think because it was temporary, I'm not saying it was short because it felt like a century, but because it was temporary and because it was so traumatizing, people wiped it off their minds and memories quite quickly. It's quite weird when I speak to some people. It's like it never existed. Or they say to me, "Oh yeah, I was furloughed and I was making sourdough," and I just want to scream. But I think what we've got coming potentially with AI and the loss of some middle-class jobs and potentially quite a lot of people becoming unemployed, which we didn't talk about or think about a year or two ago. But it seems that it's happening. It seems to be happening quite a lot in America already. I think we've got it coming. We might find ourselves as a sector in this very weird position where there'll be people knocking on doors because they've lost their white-collar jobs, saying, "I want to work in care," because other jobs are not available to them, which will be great to have more people asking to do it. But I think even more than ever, it will be important to have in place values-based recruitment and make sure that we're not just letting anybody in because people are desperate for jobs or because there are so many people. It's like, wow, we have all these people wanting to work in care, but to actually be selective about it because there are very specific skills. And I hate that they're usually called soft skills. I call them human skills. That we need to make sure that people have before coming and working in care. And it may also be that in this weird world that we live in and with the potential AI shift, that will give more respect to social care because so many other things that we've held up so high on a pedestal of office jobs, the jobs in the city that people needed massive qualifications to do. Turns out AI can do them quite easily. But it is work like social care that it isn't replaceable by AI or robots, at least for quite a long time. And that may give it weirdly more value. So I'm very interested to see what happens there with public perception and attitudes as well.
Does that give you hope for social care?
I think it gives me, so it's interesting. I don't want to be hopeful because people will lose jobs because I find it terrifying that if it happens, what is actually going to happen to the society at large. I think if it's a slow trickle of shift in the economy of which jobs are done by who and what's the level of resources you need to assign to a particular activity, I think that may push some more people towards social care, which may mean that we won't be as desperate as we would say a year ago we would be in 10 years' time for people to work as care workers, and that the value of this work will potentially increase.
That's a really good point. I think, and like you said, AI is coming in. AI can't take over what is done in social care.
Yeah.
I think, but it can help with so much stuff.
It can free up time to spend more time on relationships and direct communication and spending time with people to make their lives better. I think that's what it is already good at. And it could become increasingly good at as people open their doors to actually using it more. So the mundane admin can almost fade into the background in many ways. And we can do preventative care better because of data that we have available to us, etc. But the actual day-to-day caring, because it's very much relationship-based, cannot be replaced by that. Maybe for the very few people that would choose not to have human contact, but it is the human nature to be around other humans. And when you don't get that, it causes severe loneliness and other mental health issues. So I don't think many people would lean towards that.
Have you got any other final thoughts of anything that, you know, has changed, has improved, has happened since COVID?
I think with our work that we're doing with the advisory board of care workers and the co-production guide that we created last year, different pieces of work that we're doing, we're just launching a delegated healthcare activities report today, is that people will continue to improve their understanding of how important it is to listen to the workers that actually do the caring every day, and that their experience and expertise are incredibly valuable, and that they should be a default seat at the table, not having to fight for it.
Amazing. Amazing. And if anybody wanted to join you at the advisory board, how would they go about doing that? Are you looking
In
for
terms
more
of
people?
advisory board, applications are closed for now because we only have so many places, but we always welcome people to work with us in different ways, whether they're individual care workers, there are different spaces that we hold. We run a lot of research that people get involved in, etc. There may be another wave of recruitment for that group. And then for all corporate organizations or care providers, there are ways to support us as a charity as well, through supporter membership, through sponsorship, because the more we raise, the more care workers we can support.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you very much, Karolina. It's been great to have you on here, great to talk and share some and thoughts with you, and just, you know, let's try and do what we can to make the social care sector a better place.
Thanks a lot for having me and for your time.